I always thought that the worst thing a child could do to their parent was stop speaking to them, ignore them, become distant, roll their eyes at every rule you try to set, or lie to your face and pretend it never happened. I never imagined my son would punch me. That possibility never even lived in the same universe. I raised him, I fed him, I wiped his nose when he was sick, and I held him through so many nightmares that I memorized the shape of his cries. The idea that the same child could one day draw back his fist and swing at me was as absurd as imagining the moon falling out of the sky. But the truth is that violence starts long before the first punch. It begins with tone, with posture, with the moment a child stops believing you're someone to protect and starts testing how much they can take from you before you push back. It happened on a Thursday that didn't feel special in any way. Not an anniversary, not a holiday, not a bad day at work, just a normal, boring weekday that should have ended quietly. Dinner was on the stove, pasta sauce simmering, onions sweating in the pan, the kind of meal you make when you're tired and just trying to get everyone fed before bedtime. I remember the smell of garlic and oil mixing, sharp and warm because it clung to the air long after the kitchen turned into a battlefield. He was standing by the refrigerator when I said it. "No," I told him. Simple. Plain. Like I had said 1,000 times before. He wanted to go out. A late hangout with friends, music, skateboards, nothing too crazy in theory, except I had already gotten an email from school about him missing assignments. There was a detention notice in his backpack. He hadn't cleaned his room in a week. "No," I repeated, stirring the sauce. "We'll talk about it after you finish your work." That should have been the end of it. Maybe some muttering, maybe a door slammed upstairs, maybe him calling me annoying under his breath. But he didn't mutter. He didn't stomp off. He froze like he'd been insulted. You know that look teenagers get sometimes. Not guilt, not sadness, not even disappointment. That look where they're weighing you, calculating you, seeing how much they can get away with. That was the face he wore. He took one step closer, the phone already in his hand. "I don't need your permission," he said. His voice was quiet, too quiet, like he'd already rehearsed the argument in his head. It wasn't the volume that scared me. It was the certainty. I didn't turn around. I wasn't in the mood for a fight. "It's a school night," I answered, still stirring. "You think you're grown because you're taller than me." He cut me off. The refrigerator door snapped shut hard enough that the magnets jumped. A clatter of plastic and metal hit the floor behind me. It wasn't rage. It wasn't fear. It was a warning. A test. I bent down to pick up a magnet, one of those little ones shaped like a giraffe that he made in art class when he was 7, and that's when he moved. I didn't see the swing. I didn't hear him shout. I just felt the sudden shift of air, the weight of something launched toward me, and then impact. His fist tore into my face with the force of someone who believed the punch belonged there. It didn't feel sharp at first, more like my skull had been pulled backward while the rest of my body stayed where it was. The sound wasn't dramatic. No movie punch, no echo. It was dull, a wet, thick thud. My knees buckled. My hand hit the drawer handle. The kitchen spun sideways, and then the floor came up fast. I don't know how long it took, but I remember staring at the clean white tile and seeing red splatter across it like someone had dropped paint. My nose was bleeding. Blood came fast, warm, metallic, and humiliating. It dripped between my fingers before I even realized I was holding my face. I looked up. He was standing over me. That's the memory that haunts me more than the punch, his posture. He didn't recoil like someone who'd made a mistake. He didn't look horrified or apologetic. He looked relieved, his shoulders relaxed, chest lifted, jaw tight like he had just won something. He didn't blink. And then he said, without raising his voice, "You can't stop me. I'm a man now." 8 words. 8 words that felt heavier than his fist. I remember sitting on the floor, blood running down my lips, staring up at the boy I raised, and understanding for the first time that he had crossed a line he could not uncross. Not anger, not a tantrum, not teenage hormones. A declaration. He waited for me to explode, to grab him, to scream. Anything that would prove the punch was justified. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I stood up slowly, leaning on the counter for balance, head pulsing like there was a heartbeat behind my eyes. I wet a paper towel under the tap. The water turned pink immediately. I wiped my face. I threw the towel away. And then, because it was the only thing I could manage to say without crying, I whispered, "Go to your room." He scoffed, like the command was beneath him. "Say please." Then he walked upstairs, one slow step at a time, like a king returning to his throne. I sat on the couch the entire night. Not because I was scared he'd hit me again, because I was scared I would talk myself into forgiving him. That's what mothers do. We negotiate with ourselves. We rewrite the narrative to protect our children. Oh, he didn't mean it. He was just angry. It was an accident. But the bruise forming under my eye was not an accident. The ringing in my ears was not an accident. The quiet satisfaction in his voice was not an accident. He hit me because he believed I could not stop him, and that belief had been growing in him for a long time. I just hadn't been ready to see it until his fist made me. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was terrified of my son hurting me again, but because I was terrified of what I might say to him if I opened my mouth. There's a kind of anger that doesn't shout. It sits on your chest like a fist made of stone. You don't explode, you calcify. I watched the sunrise from the couch, bruises blooming like ink beneath my eye, and I kept asking myself the same questions. Where did I lose him? When did the disrespect become normal? How did I let him grow into something that scares me? Not once did he come downstairs to check on me. Not once did he pause outside his room. Not a single text. He slept like nothing happened. At 6:45 a.m., I was in the kitchen again, packing his lunch like I had every school morning since elementary. Sandwich, chips, water bottle. Routine felt like sanity, and I needed to keep my hands busy or I was going to pass out from the weight of last night. He came down the stairs at 7:04, phone in hand, hoodie half-zipped, socks but no shoes. He didn't look at the purple-blue blotch under my eye. He didn't look at the swollen bridge of my nose. He didn't look at the dried blood on my sleeve. He looked at the clock on the microwave. We're late. I turned off the stove burner. I know. He didn't ask about my face. He didn't ask if I needed help. He opened the fridge, slammed it shut again when there were no energy drinks inside, and muttered under his breath, "You never buy anything I actually want." I didn't answer. If he wanted a war, he wasn't getting one. Not today. The walk to the car was the longest 10 steps of my life. He moved ahead of me, shoulders wide, that lazy teenage swagger that looks like confidence but is really just brain fog and hormones. He tossed his bag into the back seat like he was throwing garbage. I slipped into the driver's seat, adjusted the mirror, saw the bruise, inhaled once, and turned the ignition. He buckled in, eyes already glued to his phone. That was the first moment I realized something. He wasn't even scared of consequences. He didn't think they existed. That scared me more than the punch. You'd think the drive would be tense or dramatic. It wasn't. It was boring. Painfully, offensively normal. He scrolled through videos, laughed, answered messages, sent voice notes to friends, as if he hadn't put his own mother on the kitchen floor 12 hours earlier. No apology, no awkwardness, no guilt, just dopamine, pixels, attention. I kept my hands tight on the wheel to stop the trembling. I didn't want him to notice how hard it was to hold myself together. I don't know if it was rage or heartbreak, but every mile made one truth louder. If I didn't do something right now, one day he would hit someone weaker than me. A girlfriend, a stranger, a child, someone who wouldn't survive it. That thought made me colder than the bruise on my face. Mom, my heart jerked at the sound of his voice. I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't mean it. I glanced over. He was frowning at me like I was the problem. Why are you driving so slow? I didn't respond. Speeding wouldn't get me what I needed today. Patience would. He rolled his eyes, leaned back, and muttered, "You're such a drama queen. I barely touched you." It wasn't just disrespect. It was delusion. He'd swung at me like he was trying to prove something. He'd waited for me to cry, scream, hit him back, but because I didn't, because I stayed quiet, he rewrote the whole truth in his head. He convinced himself it wasn't a punch. It was a tap. A mistake. My fault. That is how abusers are born, not through a single violent moment, but through the story they tell themselves after. We pulled into the school parking lot, and I didn't turn toward the student drop-off area. He finally looked up from his phone. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. He leaned forward. "Mom, seriously, drop me at the front." I kept driving along the side of the building. You could hear the shift in his breathing, the tiny edge of irritation becoming something darker. "Are you deaf?" I said. That's when he saw them. Standing near the staff entrance, the principal, 2 teachers, and 2 police officers. Not casual, not relaxed. Standing with purpose, hands folded in front, eyes scanning the parking lot, waiting for him. His expression didn't change at first. People like him don't get scared immediately. They assume everything is still a misunderstanding. He straightened up. To me. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Is this supposed to scare me?" They already gave me detention. I unbuckled my seatbelt without looking at him. No, I said quietly. It isn't detention. That sentence hit him harder than his fist hit me. He turned fully toward me now, eyes sharp, nostrils flaring, the mask of teenage invincibility cracking at the edges. What did you do? Something in his voice was different. Not arrogance, not confidence. Something small, something unfamiliar. Fear. I let him sit with that feeling, the kind of silence that makes reality sink in. Then I opened my door and stepped out into the morning air. The morning air felt different when I stepped out of the car, cold in a way that didn't touch the skin, only the spine. The kind of chill you feel when something irreversible is about to happen. I walked around the front of the car, slow, deliberate, as if every step was a decision I could still turn back from, even though I already knew I wouldn't. My son stayed in the passenger seat, frozen, phone clutched in his hand like a weapon he suddenly didn't know how to use. He wasn't scrolling anymore. He wasn't smirking. He was staring at the group waiting for him. The principal stood with her arms crossed, a clipboard against her chest. Her sweater was too thin for the cold, but her posture was steady, the calm of someone who had seen kids like my son before and was no longer impressed by their attitudes. Beside her was Mr. Turner, the guidance counselor, a big man with gentle eyes who could talk a bully down with a sentence. He wasn't gentle today. His hands were clasped behind his back, jaw clenched. Behind them were the two officers. Not bulky SWAT types, just regular patrol officers in Navy uniforms and calm expressions. The kind of calm that means they've dealt with worse and won't flinch. My son opened the passenger door, finally. He stepped out with a different kind of swagger, forced, abrasive, like someone trying to convince themselves they were still in charge. "This is stupid," he muttered. "They can't do anything to me." He slammed the door harder than necessary, trying to reclaim the power he'd lost inside the car. I didn't respond. I didn't look at him. I just walked toward the building entrance, and he had no choice but to follow. When a teenage boy knows he messed up, he always does the same thing. He talks louder. Volume is camouflage for fear. "You really called the cops on me? You're insane. I just tapped you. You're acting like I murdered someone." Every sentence was a rope he threw around himself, tightening it with every word. I kept walking. We stopped a few feet from the group. The principal greeted me first, polite but eyes sharp. "Good morning," she said quietly, like we were arriving for a dentist appointment. I nodded. My son rolled his eyes. "You all need to chill. I didn't do anything." The principal didn't look at him. That was the first blow to his ego. She looked at me. "Are you all right?" It was such a simple question, but the way she asked it, slow, careful, made it feel like someone had finally seen me. My throat tightened. I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, my son barked. "She's fine. She's being dramatic, like always." He lifted his hand, half pointing at me, as if he could talk my injuries out of existence. And then, like a sound cue in a movie, Officer James, the taller one, stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't reach for his cuffs. He simply said, "Son, keep your hands where they are." Just like that, the energy around us shifted. My son jolted. It wasn't the words, it was the tone. That was a man speaking, not a mother he could intimidate. Teenagers can argue with parents. They can ignore teachers. They can mock counselors, but they cannot outrun the authority of someone who has the legal right to touch them. He backed up a step, confused. "What? Why? What are you talking about?" Mr. Turner finally spoke. His voice didn't shake. "Your mother reported an assault. A violent assault." The sound of the word assault changed the air. Not punch, not accident. Assault. My son blinked twice, like he didn't understand the language. "Assault," he scoffed. "I hit her once. You people act like I—" Officer James raised a hand. Calm, precise. "Stop talking." Silence slapped him harder than his fist hit me. He looked around, left, right, looking for someone to play referee, waiting for someone to laugh like this was some big misunderstanding. No one laughed. The shorter officer, Officer Cruz, pulled a small notepad from her pocket. Her eyes were focused, clinical. "Your mother has visible injuries," she said. "She filed a report. There are photographs, date stamped." That was the first time I saw fear flash across his face. Small, fast, like a lightning strike. "Photographs?" he repeated. She took pictures?" The principal didn't react. Mr. Turner didn't blink. Officer James didn't move. But I saw it in their eyes. They had all seen this type before. Different names, different parents, same arrogance, same downfall. He turned to me then, as if I'd betray them all privately, as if I would step in and say, "No, it's all a misunderstanding. He didn't mean it." "Mom," he hissed, voice cracking. "Tell them it was a mistake. I looked at him for the first time since we left the house, not like my son, like a stranger." My cheek throbbed as I spoke. "You hit me, hard." His jaw clenched. "You got in my way." He didn't finish. Officer James stepped between us. "That is a confession." My son's eyes widened like he'd been slapped. He opened his mouth, but Officer Cruz cut him off. "Put your backpack down." He froze. "What? Put your backpack down." Her tone didn't change. It wasn't a threat. It was a rule, one he could not talk his way out of. He dropped it. Not gently. He threw it. It landed with a heavy thud. Textbooks, a basketball jersey, a phone charger spilling out. That was the moment every single adult there understood exactly who he was. Not a misunderstood boy, not just a rebellious teen, a kid who had never been told no in a way that stuck. Because every time someone tried to discipline him, I had softened it, rephrased it, protected him. No more. Officer James moved closer. His voice was low, controlled, almost gentle. "You are being detained for questioning." That sentence ripped through him. "No, no, no. This is crazy. She's lying. She hit me first. You're all insane." The faster he spoke, the younger he sounded. His bravado collapsed, and underneath was the scared child who broke toys when the batteries died. They didn't pull guns. They didn't tackle him. They just took away what he cared about most, control. And the moment they reached for his wrists, my son finally understood something he'd never needed to face before. Real power doesn't argue. It doesn't shout. It just acts. I'd always imagined that when my son finally faced the consequences of how he treated people, he would get angry. He'd curse, throw things, stomp like a toddler in a teenage body. That's how he was at home. If I took his phone, if I said no, if I asked him to talk to me like a human being. But the moment Officer James touched his wrist, my son didn't explode. He folded. Not physically, not all at once, but in 10 small steps of panic that I will never forget. He tried the only weapon he'd ever used successfully, charm mixed with arrogance. "Yo, hold on, my mom exaggerates. She's emotional. I didn't hurt her like that." He gestured at my cheek, as if bruises could be like that, or not like that, as if physical evidence was a matter of opinion. Officer Cruz didn't look up from her notepad. "You struck an adult in the face with a closed fist. That is assault." It was the first time in his life he heard the word assault applied to him, and couldn't soften it with excuses. He blinked once, twice, like that word didn't belong to him. You could almost see the wheels turning. He wasn't sorry. He was strategizing. "Okay, look, you don't know the whole story. My mom gets crazy when she's stressed. She blocks doors. She starts stuff." He actually pointed a thumb at me. That's when I saw Mr. Turner inhale quietly through his nose. The kind of breath a counselor takes when they watch a child become the person they're afraid of becoming. Officer James didn't blink. "You're making things worse." My son laughed nervously. "I'm just explaining. Explaining is the same as confessing," the officer said. The smile snapped off his face like someone cut a string. He turned to the principal, the same woman he used to hug when he lost his first tooth in her office. The same woman who called him my sweet boy when he was in 3rd grade. "Miss Carter," he pleaded, "tell them. You know me. I'm not violent." She didn't look at him. Not once. Her eyes stayed on me. And when she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of a decade of teachers watching my son push boundaries. "We know you. Yes, but we also know your mother." His face fell. Not with sadness, with rage. Because teenagers like him don't fear punishment. They fear being unbelieved. When the officers moved to take his backpack, something primitive kicked in. He grabbed the straps and yanked it toward his chest like a toddler snatching a toy. "No, you can't take that. My stuff's in there." Officer Cruz stepped closer. "That bag is your property. Your hands are the problem." He backed away. 1, 2, 3 steps. That's when he hit the wall behind him. Not physically, but metaphorically. No hallway to run down. No bedroom to slam a door in. No mother to shout at until she backed down. Just 4 adults who weren't afraid of him. It wasn't dramatic. No full sprint. No shouting. Just a sudden shift in posture, shoulders leaning, knees bending, fingernails tightening. Fight or flight, except he never learned how to fight without fists, and he couldn't fly anywhere with cops watching. He darted right. Officer James caught his hoodie with one hand. Not hard, not violent, just enough. The way you stop a dog from running into traffic. My son spun back around with pure disbelief in his eyes, like gravity itself had betrayed him. "You can't touch me!" he screamed, and that was the moment every power he thought he had crumbled, because up until then, every adult in his life, me, teachers, coaches, had always conceded eventually. They might lecture him, punish him, threaten him, but they'd bend. He believed authority was negotiable. Officer James didn't bend. He raised one eyebrow. I just did. It wasn't crying. It wasn't apology. It was smaller. His voice got softer. "Mom, say something. Not please, not sorry, just Mom." A request for rescue, a reminder of how things had always worked. He breaks something, I fix it. But this wasn't a broken phone screen. It wasn't a bad grade. It wasn't a fight with a friend. He broke me, and I was not going to fix it. I met his eyes, bruised, swollen, tired, and said, "You hit me." That was all. No speech, no guilt trip, no screaming, just the truth he'd been dodging. "Because you pushed me." He spit the words like acid. "You block my decisions. You never listen. You treat me like a kid." The principal finally turned her head. Her voice was low, flat, deadly calm. "You are a kid." That single sentence hit him harder than his punch hit me. Because he didn't see a principal. He saw a judge, and judges don't care about tantrums. "You don't know how she is. She starts everything. She's crazy. She makes me." Officer Cruz spoke without looking up. "And yet you're the one who hit her." He froze. No comeback, no retort, just silence, because he knew the truth. Things that work at home do not work in the real world. Manipulation, gaslighting, redirection. They evaporate in front of people who don't love you enough to excuse your behavior. Officer James shifted his stance. "Turn around." Not shouted, not aggressive, just a command. My son stared at the ground for a moment, like it could offer him another escape route. Then, slowly, his hands lifted, trembling, uncertain, because consequences don't feel like slapstick lessons or dramatic movie endings. They feel like a cold reality wrapping around your wrists. The clink of metal cuffs wasn't loud. It was quiet, precise, like punctuation at the end of a sentence. And my son, the one who thought he was untouchable, older than rules, stronger than anyone, finally looked afraid. When the cuffs closed around his wrists, he stopped pretending to be angry. All the bravado, all the swagger, all the "I'm a man now" attitude vanished. Not slowly, not gradually, just gone. I watched him stare at those cuffs like they were a pair of fangs biting into him, like he couldn't believe they were real or that they were meant for him. He looked at his hands the way a child looks at a broken toy, like it had betrayed him. That's when the crying started. Not the sobbing of regret, not the kind that comes from understanding you've hurt someone. It was a soft, embarrassed choking sound, the kind people make when they're terrified someone might see them fall apart. He muttered, barely audible, "Please, come on." Not "I'm sorry," not "I didn't mean to," just "please," like he was asking the universe to rewind 30 minutes. Officer James didn't loosen the cuffs. He didn't respond. He simply adjusted his grip on my son's arm and turned toward the exit. They began walking. You know how teenagers move when they think they're untouchable? Chest out, shoulders back, feet slamming the floor like each step matters. He didn't walk like that anymore. His knees locked weirdly, steps uneven, like he didn't quite know how to move without his hands free. His shoulders folded inward, his chin pointed at the floor. It was the posture of someone who had never met consequences before. Every hallway we passed through told a story I had never bothered to read. Teachers didn't stare at him. They stared at me, and not with pity, with recognition. You could see it in the way their eyes softened. They'd been waiting for this. Not the violence, maybe, but the accountability. A quiet disappointment, like they'd all known what he was becoming long before I admitted it. And I hated them for that. Just for a second. Because if they had said something earlier, really said something, not hinted, not smirked, not shrugged, maybe I could have stopped this. But then I realized the truth. They had said something. Parent-teacher conferences, emails about behavioral concerns, notes about attitude in class, or difficulty respecting boundaries. I was the one who softened it. I was the one who said, "He's stressed, he'll mature, he just needs patience." I wasn't raising a boy. I was protecting a monster in progress. We reached the front of the school. Outside, the sun was fully up now, bright and golden, completely uninterested in what was happening to us. 2 police cars waited near the curb, engines humming quietly. The sight of them triggered something in him. He twisted, turning toward me suddenly. "Mom, please, say something. Tell them. I didn't mean to hurt you." He said it loud enough to echo across the entrance, and for a moment, for a split second, a familiar ache crawled through my veins. The ache of being needed, of being the lifeline, of being the one he always returned to when things went wrong. I could have said anything right there. I could have given them a softer version. I could have taken responsibility. I could have cried and begged them to wait. Every mother instinct in my body wanted to step forward and fix it. But I remembered the kitchen tile and the sound of his voice. "You can't stop me. I'm a man now," and the guilt dissolved. I swallowed, blinked away the tears, and answered him, "You hit me because you thought you could." He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman speaking. Officer Cruz opened the back door of the patrol car. She spoke gently, like she'd said these words 100 times. "You're not being arrested. You're being detained while we complete the report." He didn't care about the difference. His legs locked, his feet rooted themselves to the pavement. He wasn't resisting physically, just freezing, like prey that finally realized the hunter wasn't bluffing. Officer James nudged him forward with 2 fingers. He lost his balance and stumbled into the back seat. I didn't realize how young he still looked until that moment. 16 years old, broad shoulders, athlete's build. But with his wrists behind his back and his eyes wide with panic, he was just a child pretending to be dangerous. The door shut, heavy and final. I stood there beside the principal and the counselor, hands shaking, breath uneven. The officers stepped aside to speak to us. I expected a lecture about domestic safety, or a warning about the next steps, or paperwork. Instead, Officer Cruz spoke in a voice so tired I could feel the years behind it. He'd do it again, and worse. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't accusatory. It was simple, clinical truth, and it hit harder than his fist. I opened my mouth to say something, I don't know what, but the counselor cut in. His tone was soft, almost apologetic. "We've been worried about him for a while." The principal nodded slowly. "He's been bullying other students, breaking things, laughing when younger kids cry." I stared at her, stunned. No one had told me that part. She hesitated, just a beat, and then added, "You're not the first person he's hit." The world tilted. It felt like the floor dropped away from beneath my feet. I had spent months convincing myself he was only cruel to me, that it was a phase, that I could absorb it. But there are some children who don't grow out of cruelty. They grow into it. And I had almost helped him step into adulthood with that cruelty intact. They didn't put him in a cell. I think that shocked him more than handcuffs would have. Cells are for criminals in movies. They're dramatic. He could have imagined himself being tough behind bars, chin up, eyes narrowed, like some misunderstood anti-hero. Instead, they sat him in a bland interview room with beige walls and chairs bolted to the floor. No bars, no intimidation, just a table, a camera, and the weight of reality. It was the kind of room built to make you talk, not scream, not fight. Talk. And he hated that more than anything. He kept staring at the door, waiting for someone to burst in and tell him it was all a mistake, that this was just a scare tactic, that he could go home and scream at his mother in peace. Nobody did. I sat outside on a plastic bench, bruised face throbbing under fluorescent lights. It was the ugliest space I'd ever seen. Cold tile, old posters, coffee that smelled like burnt rubber, and yet it felt like the safest place I'd been in months. The world wasn't on my shoulders. For once, I didn't have to anticipate his next explosion. I didn't have to negotiate. I didn't have to brace myself. He wasn't in control. He wasn't in my kitchen. He wasn't towering over me with rage in his eyes. He was a boy facing the world he thought he could bully. And the world was not impressed. A woman from youth services came to sit beside me. She was older, silver hair tied back, glasses perched at the edge of her nose. She didn't speak for a full minute. She let me breathe. Then she said something so quietly I almost missed it. "You did the right thing." It sounded like a verdict, like she'd presided over hundreds of mothers just like me, and she already knew the script. My throat tightened. "I don't want him to hate me," I managed. She gave a tired, gentle smile. "He's supposed to hate you. For about 5 minutes. Then he learns." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Inside the interview room, he was unraveling. I couldn't hear him, soundproofed walls, but I could see through the glass panel in the door. His hair was messed from pulling at it, his shoulders hunched. He was talking fast, hands moving, words spilling uncontrollably. Officer James wasn't yelling. He sat across from him calmly, arms folded, ankle resting on knee. Every time my son raised his voice, the officer just waited. It broke him faster than shouting ever would. Because kids like him only understand 2 kinds of power, the kind that hits back, and the kind that doesn't need to. And right then, the second kind was swallowing him whole. He tried every tactic he knew. He tried denial. He tried the "I'm the victim" routine. He tried to make it about stress, school, hormones. None of it worked. Eventually the door opened, and they called me in. Not for drama, not for confrontation, just so he could hear his life from the outside. He looked up when I entered, eyes red, not tears red, anger red, the kind of eyes a child gets when the universe doesn't collapse for him. He sat there cuffed to the table like this was all one big misunderstanding. "Mom, tell them I didn't mean it. Tell them please, this is insane." The social worker stood beside him. Her voice was flat. "You hit her. You aimed. You did not stop." He shook his head so hard, I thought his neck would snap. "It was just one time, one time." I sat across from him, hands folded, heart burning, throat bruised by silence. "One time," I echoed. "Until next time." He froze. That was the moment. Not the cuffs, not the police, not the school. That sentence, because he finally understood. I wasn't afraid of what he did. I was afraid of who he was becoming. Officer Cruz slid a paper across the table. It wasn't dramatic, just a printed list of consequences. He read slowly, shaking. Mandatory counseling, anger management, school suspension, zero-contact probationary contract. And then the last one, the one that mattered, assault charge entered in juvenile record. His voice cracked into something raw and unfamiliar. "You're ruining everything." Officer James leaned forward. "You ruined it the moment you punched your mother. No volume, no rage, just truth." My son stared at the table, breathing so hard his chest trembled. He looked like he couldn't recognize himself. And that was the lesson. The mirror wasn't the bruise on my face. It was the paperwork in front of him, all the things he'd never been held accountable for, collecting interest over time. They uncuffed him slowly and handed him a pen. The paper required his signature. He didn't want to sign. He wanted to argue, shout, lash out. His hand hovered over the line, shaking. Then he looked at me. And for the first time, not in months, not in years, but maybe ever, I saw something that looked like understanding behind his anger. Not fear of punishment, fear of what he was capable of becoming. His voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry." Not loud, not dramatic, just a crack in a thick wall. It wasn't enough to erase anything, but it was enough to begin something. He signed. The sound of the pen dragging across the paper felt heavier than the punch he'd thrown. It wasn't physical pain anymore. It was consequence. When we walked out of the station, the world looked ordinary. Cars moving, wind blowing, birds hopping along the sidewalk. But I wasn't the same woman who walked in, and he wasn't the same boy who thought he was a man. We didn't speak in the car. He stared out the window like a stranger in his own life, and I drove quietly, knowing something had finally broken the spell. Not punishment, not fear, consequence, and the truth every parent eventually learns. You can love your child with your whole body, but you cannot let them destroy you, because if they destroy you, they will destroy everyone else too. And I was done letting him practice on me.